Good morning, and I'm so happy to be here to be able to share. Yesterday, I shared some research on the work that we do in this world of intelligent buildings and smart homes. How many here know CABA? Raise your hand. CABA? All right, we're not, and that's one of the reasons we try to attend. Last year, we attended over 35 events all over the world because CABA's been around 30 years, and we've been working with the world of intelligent buildings and smart homes. Of course, it's called building automation, home automation, now IoT, and it's changing dramatically. We're governed by a board of directors, a very prestigious board of directors. These companies, and many of them are right here, like Siemens and Bosch and Honeywell. So these companies give the strategic direction to our organization, and we have, in fact, over 370 member organizations from all over the world. And we now work with about 25,000 plus people that are accessing our research, accessing the great information that we provide to the industry. Because no one person, no one company can follow all the changes. So some of you are very familiar with the whole world of smart buildings, smart homes, integrated systems, convergence of systems. But basically, it's really just standalone systems like lighting with sensors being tied in, for example, with heating, ventilation, air conditioning, tied in with security, life safety systems. So was the basic 30 years ago. And of course, not only did it allow organizations to lower their energy costs, save water, make their buildings more productive, but it actually started to move into the enterprise. So when you look at the history over the last, say, 30 years or so, and where we're going, we can actually see that critical bell curve. So basically, we've crossed the chasm, we're climbing up for mass adoption. And I think if you look at this great event and you see all these great companies and products and services that are being made available to the built sector, whether it's homes, commercial, airports, sports stadiums, industrial, it's changing dramatically. And why is it changing even more dramatically? Because now we have things like the Internet of Things. So IP has really been something that's driving it. Voice recognition, particularly in the home, connected home. Certainly artificial intelligence, advanced algorithms are all coming into play, making it even more powerful, more beneficial, more valuable for the end user. In fact, this slide, which IBM developed, really starts to show how not just are the systems working together very nicely, but by moving into the cloud, we're able to tap into many other segments. For example, automotive, we're hearing about connected cars, which connect to our homes and our offices. Healthcare, for example, with wearables. There's a great little startup company that I just learned about who have developed a little booty for a baby, and there's sensors in it that monitor that baby and its vital signs. It's a startup. It's selling like hotcakes. I don't know the name of the company, but apparently it's already been credited with saving over 200 babies' lives. So there's an example how wearables can be very powerful. So we do research. One of the things we do, we gather research. We have the world's largest research library. We undertake research working with major research firms like BISRIA, IHS Markit, Frost & Sullivan. So today I'm going to talk a bit about the intelligent buildings design and implementation and share with you some of the recent findings. What's working, what's not working. We did one on multi-dwelling units and, of course, apartments, condos, schools, army barracks, all very powerful. We do market sizing studies. This is I spoke yesterday on intelligent buildings and impact of IoT. Give a little plug. I'm over at Intersect right after this sharing some information on IoT. Anyway, so I'm going to share with you, and these companies help fund the research, so they get the full research. They pay a very small amount of money. We can do the research, and then we can share all of it with those companies that fund it, but we actually share the executive summary with all the people. In fact, I'm going to tell you, if you stay till the end, we're going to do a draw. That report has just been done, completed. We'll do a draw. It's worth several thousands of dollars. Somebody will win that if you want to. Give your card. Anna's going to help me. And as a consolation prize, we're going to give the executive summary to anyone that gave their card but maybe didn't win the full report. Anyway, these companies all helped fund it. So let's dig into some of the things that are happening. When we look at design build and the implementation of technology, there's many things that are working well. Unfortunately, there's many things that aren't working well. And if you're involved in this world of either selling from an OEM standpoint, hardware, software, if you are an architect, any architects in this group here? Architects? How about OEMs of hardware, software? Original equipment manufacturers? How about installers, integrators? How about you just found a nice chair to sit down and you thought you'd want to have some coffee out later? So design, there's several ways that, there's different ways that buildings are built, which relate in our sector. So there's a design, bid, build process. That's a very common one. But it doesn't include the implementation. That's the second type. So where you actually have implementation of the technology in the design build process. And then there's another aspect which is very common where you actually link performance. What do I mean by that? Well, what if you put in all this great technology and energy management system for HVAC, lighting, and you were able to show that you're going to do savings of money in that process. So that's part of the contract. And then, of course, the last phase is collaboration. Now, you'll see a lot of information here. The good news is I believe these presentations are going to be made available to everybody. They'll be posted, hopefully. So so you don't have to take copious notes. Hopefully you can see it. And it's also posted on our CABA website. All the presentations we give, whether it's in Shanghai or Dallas or Sao Paulo, Brazil, we post those presentations. So come to our website and look at it. So there's a number of key issues that arise when we start to see how a builder or an owner who would like to have all this great technology that we see here, and they want that, and they look at the different processes that they can go through to get that in their buildings. Herein lies some of the issues. First of all, some of that, even though the owner might say, I want a great building like the Edge building in Amsterdam, right? The Deloitte building. How many people know of the Deloitte building? It's a famous now, a year and a half in existence. It's the most intelligent, most sustainable building. Go to YouTube and do a search on the Edge of the building. It's a dramatic example of how you can have a building that's 70% of what a normal 100% saves 30%. Think of all the buildings we have in Europe or North America or the world, that we could take 30% of that footprint and throw it out. We didn't need it. Think about it. Huge savings. Anyway, I digress. So one of the problems, of course, is that for owners and builders, you may not really have, you kind of heard about this intelligent buildings. You can have energy savings. You can use data analytics. You can do diagnostics on buildings and your equipment and say, that's great, that's what I want. In fact, I go to these conferences, I see the technology, I read about it, I see the Edge building, and how do I get that? So the vision sometimes gets skewed, and we call it value engineering. The great technology gets value engineered out of the system. Why? Well, because the architect, who is a very key part of that process, might have a different vision. But let's say he has the same vision, or he or she has the same vision as the owner. Actually, maybe then the integrator who's a part of that process, maybe the OEM who wins the contract, which could be Siemens, Schneider Electric, Honeywell, Johnson Controls, any number of companies, or maybe it's a combination of companies who are doing different pieces of that. So therein lies part of the problem, because if you have all these great companies working together, it's not necessarily a shared vision. And there's issues that fall into play because maybe money is driving it, maybe technology is driving it. Maybe a certain company wants to have their technology in, which is not necessarily the best. Maybe their technology doesn't work with other companies. But that's changing, because even like Tritium, one of our great members there, has now software Niagara product, and there's others which will allow disparate systems to work together. So that used to be a big problem, but shouldn't be a problem today. So if we look at the breakdown and the failures of what's happening within our process, we're saying, well, it doesn't make sense. We should have a lot of buildings that are intelligent. We can save money. We can make them much more efficient. And I'm going to talk a bit about how the people can be much more healthy, wellness, more productive. So why wouldn't you do that? Well, a lot of builders and developers who are flipping the building, they don't really, unless they see a 2-year payback, 2 years, which lighting can give you. So lighting is the low-hanging fruit. But basically, they don't necessarily see the value proposition. It hasn't really occurred to them that they can make their building much more valuable. They can have higher rents. They can have employees that are healthier and more productive. So one of the problems that we see in what we found in the research is that there are some failures, some key failures. One, that communication between these key players, and let me just go right here. If you look at the key players, what should happen in the early stages, the builder, the owners, should be clear on their goals and objectives, bring in the architects, the design and build companies, they're involved, all the contractors, system integrators, and then notice, even when you're in this stage, you're always communicating back and forth saying, this is an issue, how do we resolve it? Because we know what your vision is, we share your vision. So clearly, we know that there is still, with the potential, research is showing there's a 46% growth rate estimated. So the good news is the messaging, and that's part of what CABA does, is try to educate and inform. Because time, I'm going to keep rolling with this presentation. So here are 4 key things that are causing the failure of having all this great technology go into buildings. Number 1, lack of partner alignment. Remember what I said? You have all these partners, all these players. They don't all see eye to eye. Maybe actually on the CapEx side, the contractors are incentivized to come in under budget. They'll squeeze the architects. And the architects, you'll see in a minute, don't make a lot on the project. And they could care less of the operating costs, which is huge. So, and then there's just not having a clear vision. Let's say the owner, the developer doesn't really understand because it's a new technology and he doesn't understand. And then the whole just disjointed process I showed you where you don't have everybody communicating and somebody's value engineering some of the great technology out of the system. And then finally, the whole planning process is disjointed. You have the inability to monitor, to test, to adapt. Sometimes companies actually set up prototypes to actually work. The Edge building, as an example, was a prototype building. Has now been so successful, the construction company in Holland is actually developing a whole division. We had the architect, Ron Becker, do a presentation on one of our councils to our council. We recorded it. You can see it on our website. But they actually now see the value of how after a year and a half, it's been really a success story. So if I look at some of the quick domain issues and challenges, and again, I don't have time to go through all of this, but let's not value engineer the great technology out of the thing. You can give absolute control. You cannot, should not give it strictly to the contractors. It's got to be a shared